It is so commonplace in their lives. And that is a real danger, is that children today, and by children I mean those who are very young and those who are young adults in high school and middle school, are failing to recognize the difference between positive and negative behavior because of what they see every single day around them.
He isolated me from my friends and my family.
He's my uncle, a family member, and someone that's supposed to protect you and not hurt you, but instead, he did all the wrong things.
Hi, and welcome back to Safer, Smarter Teens. I'm Lauren Book. In our last lesson together, we learned about the characteristics of healthy versus unhealthy relationships. We talked about boundaries between people and maintaining a healthy balance of power. One very serious boundary violation is sexual abuse. In this lesson, you will hear the stories of real people who survived and overcame this very sensitive and personal form of abuse.
Sexual abuse in our society is very prevalent. Currently, there are approximately 42 million survivors of child sexual abuse in the United States alone. Statistics show that 1 in 3 girls and 1 in 5 boys will experience sexual violence before the age of 18. The most important thing to remember is that 10% of sexual abuse is perpetrated by a stranger, somebody you've never met. 90% of the time, it's by somebody you know and or love. And that's what makes it so hard to tell.
Many victims don't tell anyone about sexual abuse for years. In some cases, they never do, and that makes them feel so alone. But overcoming the effects of abuse begins by sharing your story and reaching out for help. During the years I was being abused, I felt like I was the only person in the world it could ever happen to. If only I had known that so many other people experienced what I was experiencing, I might have reached out for help sooner. I certainly wouldn't have felt so alone.
It was done in a very secret and discreet way that no one would ever suspect anything. So I don't think that my mom missed anything because of the way he went about the abuse.
The person that abused him was a very trusted friend. It was a family friend. So I think the impact was that the problem with that situation is that when Scott came out and told people, a lot of people didn't believe him because of the implications of the friend that was involved. And that really complicated things. And it's sad how people abuse their authority in life, you know, especially the people like a police officer or something in that fortitude you would want to trust, but in the end they're just manipulating their power to take advantage of people, especially very susceptible people, which is a real sad thing to think about.
He loved my kids, and one thing he said that touched my heart was, this is my second chance to be a great dad, because he wasn't to his daughter. And he said, now God's giving me a second chance, and he was a pastor. So what was there for me to be worried about?
He made it seem like everybody else in the world hated me and he was the only one that loved me. And so that's how I felt. I felt that he was the only person that was there for me. I felt that he was my only friend. I felt that he was the only person that I could trust. And he made it so that I leaned on him for everything, that I had lost a part of myself because I was so wrapped up into him. And he made it so that he had complete control over me. And I didn't even realize it. I just thought that he was being a good parent, a good friend, and someone that I could lean on.
Childhood sexual abuse cuts across all socioeconomic backgrounds, cultural, economic, it matters not. In my own case, we lived in a gated community and people thought that that protected us. And the reality is that it happens in temples, churches, mosques, in every zip code all throughout the world. That it matters not what color, race, religion you are. The greatest risk factor of being a victim of child sexual abuse is being a child. And we all know that being a child shouldn't hurt, but all too often it does. And so it's so important that if that is something that has happened to you or someone that you know, to get help. Because that is how you become victim to victor and survivor to thriver.
When you say the word groomer, it doesn't sound as awful as it is. I mean, it's a perpetrator, it's a manipulator. It's somebody that manipulates a person to get what they need or get what they want. Many times you can see manipulators as peers, that they're manipulating you in ways, they're giving you flattery. They're telling you how beautiful you are and that you're so amazing and nobody understands me like you do. So they're using that in order to get something from you, whether it be sex, whether it be naked pictures, whether it be whatever it is that they need or want from you. Sometimes you'll see where perpetrators will groom families in order to have access to children to abuse. You will see men that will only date single mothers. They will, because they know that that mother, she needs help. So they'll start dating this single mother. They'll become the caregiver of these children, and then they have access to those children. And because of the nature of sexual abuse being so secretive, you have to have access to children. It's very difficult to grab a child off the street and sexually abuse them because they're immediately going to tell. Most of the time, because they don't have any fear of what's going to happen to this person because they don't know them. When it's somebody in their home, they have that fear of what's going to happen to mom. Is mom going to be able to pay the bills?
Grooming of a child begins with testing lines and boundaries. It could begin with slipping with foul language, cursing in front of a child when they're not supposed to use curse words. So benign, something that you would never think is the beginning of a very violent and dangerous relationship, could turn into that person accidentally exposing themselves to the child, maybe allowing them to walk in on them in the bathroom. And then that continues again to snowball when a child does not tell a trusted adult what had happened, that they didn't feel comfortable with the foul language or the exposure. That then turns into longer-term abuse and grooming. In my case, my abuser would give me a hug, a longer hug. She'd touch my leg when we were driving in the car. And then one day I was chewing gum rather loudly, and she said, "Stop chewing your gum that way." And I said, "Oh yeah, what are you gonna do about it?" And she said, "Well, I'll show you." And she took her tongue and put her tongue in my mouth and took the gum out of my mouth with her tongue. And I'll never forget the sound of the gum hitting the tin can while she walked away. That's how children feel. Everything else disappeared. All I could see was her walking away and throwing the gum out. And I couldn't think about anything else. I couldn't do anything else. I was paralyzed. I didn't go and tell an adult. I didn't go tell a trusted parent, a teacher, a counselor. And that's how she knew that she had me.
He became what I thought was my best friend. He was the only person I had, and he made it so that we told each other secrets, and, you know, he wanted himself to be the only person that I trusted. And one night he took advantage of me, and he thought that getting me high and getting me drunk would make me do stuff with him. And I wouldn't do that, but he kept making advances towards me.
Being a guy, I think he was embarrassed, and it's something that you hold close to your heart, and you're probably one of the most terrifying things to tell people is, you know, that someone's violated you in a manner that really hurts your soul. The consequences of Scott's abuse was that he was very emotionally scarred for years and years and years, and because of he was holding everything in, that it really affected him in a way where he turned to drugs, he turned to partying.
The important thing with children, even teenagers who were sexually abused as young kids and never told, they can still be suffering in ways today. They can have trouble concentrating, they can not be doing well in school, they can have eating disorders, or even go towards substances in ways of coping with what happened. Sometimes teenagers will think that, well, I was sexually abused so long ago, it's not affecting me now. But actively pushing it out of your mind and trying to forget about it is a way that it's affecting you.
If friends have been able to share a lot of things in the past, and then all of a sudden that sharing diminishes or completely just goes away, you know, you can't help but to wonder why that is and what has caused that to happen. And so that in and of itself may be a sign that something unhealthy is taking place. Avoidance. You know, friends obviously hang out together and talk on, you know, about different things at different times. And so if one individual is all of a sudden not available to talk or reluctant to talk, you know, that might be a red flag that something's happening that warrants further investigation.
We can be very good at noticing a change in behavior in our friends. And I would say it's important to ask people. You know, sometimes we don't ask questions because we're afraid of the answers, But if you really care about somebody and you see something changing, ask what's going on, and I hope be willing to hear the answer.
Sometimes teenagers feel the only option they have is to run away. It puts them at additional risks. They're out there, they're alone. There are perpetrators that are specifically looking for kids that feel lost, that have nobody. So they're at a higher risk of sexual exploitation.
If you feel that you're in an unsafe situation, it's really important to reach out. That's the most important thing you can do. Sometimes it feels really scary to reach out to somebody in law enforcement or to call a police officer. And so if you feel comfortable with a friend, a best friend, maybe there's a coach that you really identify with and can share things with. Maybe there's a mentor at a club that you're in at school, or a teacher that you really like. Sometimes it's better, I've found, for students or for young people to write or text, and so you can get it out in that way. However that feels safe for you, do that. Whether it's a peer, a teacher, a coach, a mentor, reach out. Write it down, say it out loud, record it, and put it in their mailbox. Any way that you can do it, that it's easy and safe for you, reach out, access help so that you can stay safe and be safe.
They will say, no one will believe you if you tell them. Well, that's really not true. People are more and more willing than they ever were before to believe you when you tell them that you've been sexually abused. So tell them. Find someone who you really believe is a good person who you think is going to listen to you, and tell them. And if that person doesn't believe you, because it is a hard thing for people to believe, tell someone else. Tell until somebody believes you. You don't have to live with it by yourself. And if you can't find a person that you know, pick up the phone and call your local rape crisis center. You don't have to tell them who you are. All those calls are anonymous. They don't have caller ID. Call and talk through it with somebody so you're not alone.
I think it was very important to finally tell someone, and especially my mom. It was a huge weight that was lifted off my shoulders. I was able to finally get a good night's rest. I don't think I've ever slept that well as the night I did when I first heard my mom. Just being at peace, having a peace of mind, and to no longer hold someone else's secret, and a secret as big as the one that I held for so long.
If you've been a victim of sexual abuse, you need to know that you are not alone and that it's not your fault. You can go on to become a thriving survivor. It takes courage to get out of an unsafe situation, but there are people who can help you. You can talk to a guidance counselor, a teacher, a family member, or any trusted adult. Healing begins when you tell someone your story.